Billy, how we doing? This is awesome. We're back from Kansas City. It seems like it was yesterday. I'm Theo Greminger. I'm joined as always by Billy Muzio. Last time we recorded, Billy, it was in like a basement, and we were side by side. So we're back. We're back to normal. It feels nice to kind of be home. But gosh, we had a great time out there, didn't we?
It was a great time out in Kansas City. You know, we got to all meet up in person. I forgot to put your Jordans in the background. I went back to back. Theo left his shoes at the house, and I was like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna take these so I can put them in the back of the recording." And I wasn't even gonna say anything, but I had to be a good friend. I let Theo know I had his shoes, but I was just gonna leave them there in the podcast and see if he even noticed the entire time.
And they're very anybody listening. I'm a little bit of a sneaker guy. They're like a beautiful pair of Air Jordan 1s, and Billy's now in possession of them on the opposite coast of the country. So we're gonna have to figure out how to get those sometime soonish. I'm gonna send you a FedEx or UPS. But I appreciate you bringing those. And
they're my size, Theo. They're size 12.
No, those are 13s, Billy. Those are 13s. So they'll be a little too big on you. Don't put them on. Don't put them on. So we met before the draft, and we met with Matt Kelly, the Podfather, and we made some predictions for the draft. And we talked about a couple players that we were a little nervous for. Like maybe they're going to get their values might get screwed up during the draft. And just like every NFL draft, surprises. Certain guys who we were expecting might have an issue actually come through unscathed, and certain guys that we were completely unprepared for certainly have a draft day hit. Potential hits to their value, potential hits to their volume. These are the kind of things that we want to worry about right now. You're deep in best balls right now. Me and you draft against one another at the end of the month in the Hardway League. It's redraft season now. I mean, we have our rookie drafts for our Dynasty leagues this weekend. But we're back in business here. The table has been set, and we have to really readjust the market here. So, what was your general takeaway from the draft besides us being correct on Bijan Robinson landing spot?
Overall, there was a lot of running backs who escaped kind of unharmed inside of the draft that I was expecting teams to add some sort of competition earlier than they did, and tight ends that escaped as well. There's some really, really friendly positions that really came out really clean. And I'm looking at my early best ball shares and saying, oh man, I got pretty lucky so far through the NFL draft, because when we draft as early as we do, right, I maxed out the FFPC early best ball tournament. I'm already in 11 drafts here in the second tournament now. That's going to be the main one for the entire season. And so when we draft this early, there's a few things we have to be concerned about. Free agency is one of them. The draft is another one. And then injuries, right? And so far, with the exception of maybe one player that I was high on, I've got it pretty clean so far. So I'm liking my odds, knock on wood, but let's see how it unfolds.
Yeah. And it's funny. People kind of get this overreaction after the NFL draft. And I feel like me and you, we draft so often, and we've done this for such a long time, not like a flex, but when one player adjusts, you can often find new values. So do you kind of find that, like, even if it hasn't really affected the top so much, do you find that you have to like completely readjust, or you're kind of hitting the same similar guys in your drafts right after the NFL draft?
No, they have to adjust.
Yeah.
Right? The entire equation kind of adjusts. I mean, there's going to be players that, like Tony Pollard, in my opinion, who's still going too late in drafts.
Yep.
Rhamondre Stevenson, who's still going too late in drafts. Players that come out of the NFL draft that have a larger opportunity share than what I was already projecting them for. You have to adjust. Now, I'm not going to take them ahead of ADP, but I am going to take them maybe a couple spots before where I was. And there's also the flip side of the coin, right? Players that you were taking, like Kenneth Walker is a prime example, right? We look at, prior to the NFL draft, he was going kind of that middle of round 2, like clockwork. And last night I just got him in round 4 in a draft. And so that's a 2-round drop, middle of round 4 at that. So literally 2-round drop since the NFL draft. And if you don't adjust and you continue to take him where you were taking, you're losing so much value, and you're going to be able to still build that same team that you would have been able to build, right? So now instead of taking Ken Walker in round 2, you could take a Waddle in round 2. You could take an Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can take who's climbing also, right? You can take another player and still get Kenneth Walker. So I think that if you don't adjust, you're going to be, you're going to be paying the price, and you're going to be the rake.
Yeah, basically take lock is one of the, we'll talk as the summer moves along and we draft live. We have some excellent drafters come on our show. Like having take lock and being inflexible is really a terrible approach, especially if you're going to do volume. You have to kind of like move with the punches here. But yeah, I mean, I will say that when we talked about the players we value and their ADPs, them coming through unscathed, I mean, it feels fantastic. I had a, not to get too dynasty-ish right now, but I had a lot of Rachaad White. I held everything. I didn't succumb to trading him away cheap. There was a lot of fears there, and I held a lot. So I have I'm not going to say the amount of money I have in Rachaad White right now, but it's probably similar to your amount in best ball. The only share that I moved was I traded Rachaad White and the 107 to move up for the 102. And that was before the Jahmyr Gibbs landing spot. So I really want to touch base with you first on, to me, we knew Bijan Robinson was going to go high. We predicted Atlanta here on First Class Fantasy. We were not shocked at all by the top 10. The writing was on the wall. We could spend a whole lot of time on Bijan. Bijan's locked into the top 15 from here and forever, and that's that. But one player who's going to rise up significantly, basically hit the nuts landing spot in terms of draft capital, is Jahmyr Gibbs. Goes 12th overall to Detroit. I was at the draft. You were at the house. People were shocked by the pick. It was like a gasps. And not only did Jahmyr Gibbs manage to land in Detroit, a place that loved him enough to take him 12, but 2 days later they trade DeAndre Swift, who's been a very productive player for them, a guy they spent a second-round draft pick on. He's hit 15 points per game twice in 3 years in fantasy. What should our expectations be of a Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery backfield?
So I think people don't want to admit it, but David Montgomery will lead this backfield in overall rush share. I have him right now projected for 48% of the rush share. Jahmyr Gibbs, I have him projected for 38% of the rush share. Where Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be heavily involved is going to be the passing game, right? And Jahmyr Gibbs was heavily involved inside the passing game in college. One of the reasons why they were okay letting go of Swift, right? I think that we are expecting Gibbs to be what Swift could never be inside of this offense, because you look at Gibbs's target share inside college, and it was 14.7%, 93rd percentile inside this draft class. And I think that overall Gibbs is a phenomenal player. We just got done kind of joking around on Dominator. People were saying that it was going to be a 60-40 split Jahmyr Gibbs, and we plugged those numbers into the projections live on air, and it put him as like RB3. So don't expect 60% of the rush share from Gibbs. It's not going to happen, but we do expect to see him closer to 40% of the rush share. Passing volume is going to prop up his fantasy score, and I have him as RB18 overall.
And I think that the thing that you have to remember with Billy is when Billy says RB18 overall, you might say, oh, whatever. But if Billy's Billy's has very realistic, unlike inflated projections. He's very good with this. So all it takes is if he beats your projection by 10%, Billy, which is not a whole lot, where would that put him?
It's going to put him like just inside the top 14.
So he's right there.
He's that high-end RB2, back-end RB1 if he beats the projection by 10%. If David Montgomery goes down, then we're talking about an RB1.
So for me, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think will finish running back 14 or higher. I'm going to take a bullish approach here. I think that there's a massive opportunity share for him in the passing game to support Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love Sam LaPorta. I know you like Sam LaPorta as well, but rookie tight end, it's a lot to ask him to catch more than like 50 balls.
It is.
Yep. So if Sam LaPorta hits 50 catches as a rookie, that's a win. But for me, it's Jahmyr Gibbs has this opportunity to have 70 receptions. I don't think that's crazy. And if I'm off a little, he's still over 65 receptions. It'll put him in, top 6 among running backs. And you mentioned the 38% rushing opportunity. The one beautiful thing about playing with a back like David Montgomery is Gibbs is not going to have to take the hits. So when you say 38% of rushes, I think there's going to be an opportunity for a high yards per carry, a chance to get him out in space, a chance to use him on draws. This whole thing interests me. So we're both into it. So how would you approach David Montgomery right now? Does he become the value?
He is a value. And I think when you look at the rankings, so if you go over to playerprofiler.com, head up to the rankings tab at the top, and you go to the seasonal rankings, it doesn't have the projections in here, but they're on the backside. And right now, like I said, I have Gibbs as RB. He moves to RB 17, so I lied. Sorry, RB 17. He moved up. Montgomery comes in as RB 24, so we have two backs inside the top 24 over here in Detroit. But it's because they have an outstanding offensive line.
Yes.
We saw what Jamal Williams was able to do last year inside this offense. I know David Montgomery is a better back, especially at this point in his career. We're expecting him to be, the goal line back for the most part. Don't get me wrong. They'll get Jahmyr Gibbs involved inside of, packages and third down passes and whatnot. But overall, I think that David Montgomery will lead the red zone touches between these two. And I think he is a value. I think if anyone has a chance to really beat the projection by more than 10%, David Montgomery is a name that's going to be near the top of that list. Like right now, I have him ranked ahead of Miles Sanders, ahead of James Conner, right behind Isaiah Pacheco. So there's a real opportunity for David Montgomery to beat this projection. I talked about earlier the overall number of the rushing share opportunity, and it's 48%. It's 220 rushing attempts, so not a lot, but I mean it's a decent amount. His yards per carry have kind of been holding down his averages in the past, but again, Chicago didn't have the best offensive line. He comes over here to the Lions, who have a much better offensive line, so we gave him a bump in efficiency here. We're going to have him averaging 4.2 carries. Just going to be above 900 rushing yards, and David Montgomery's still involved in the passing game as well. So this is where people need to. I understand Gibbs is electric inside the passing game. Gibbs is an electric back. They took him top 12. That being said, I hear people saying that they would take him, as an RB1 in Dynasty. Sure, redraft. There's just not that many outs for him to hit an RB1, in my opinion, just because Montgomery is also involved inside the passing game. I mean, look at what David Montgomery has done in the passing game. I understand new team, new coach, new system, but even when he's had 54 receptions in his career at one point. 25 in his rookie campaign, 54 in his sophomore campaign, 42 in 2021, 34 receptions last year. So it's not like he's some scrub inside the passing game. He's still going to be involved. And so I like David Montgomery this year.
David Montgomery actually had his highest yards per catch this past season. It was obviously a low volume passing offense, but that was significant. So I'll say this, like with Gibbs, we want Alvin Kamara rookie year. That's kind of like if he threads the needle and he crushes it this year, that's the dream. That's the dream. So, like, do we recall Christian McCaffrey's rookie year? Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to pull up his stats right now as a rookie. Like, these guys usually blow up in year two. In terms of, and a lot of these running backs that are rookies, you see them crush it down the stretch. Breece Hall was a little different. Breece Hall was maybe a little bit out at the gate, nothing crazy, and then he ripped it. But you think about like Jonathan Taylor, a number of these backs, it's not necessarily from game one. But I'm pulling up McCaffrey stats just so we see a little context.
117 rushing attempts, 435 rushing yards. He averaged 3.7 yards per carry, hit 80 receptions, 651 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. He was RB number 12 in points per game. I don't know about where it was for the overall season, though.
But I think that's also like an archetype there where he was playing with another running back that was, it wasn't like his show, but he had the 80 receptions there. So running back 12 there. But I agree, Billy. I think that the writing's on the wall that Gibbs is going to steam up to maybe a point in ADP where we're off of him. But Montgomery, interesting. And I'll say your projection of 220 carries for Montgomery, like Jamal Williams had 260 last year, 262. So I think that's like, you're going to hit that for sure as long as he stays healthy. And we love the offensive coordinator. We love the situation. Detroit was top 10 in scoring last year in points per game. They're a very, very efficient offense. One offense that has me a little nervous here, unlike Detroit, I want to draft both running backs. Like, talk me off of drafting both. Seattle has me scared to death. Ken Walker was a guy that we have talked about. We talked about it with JJ Zachariason. We've talked about it with each other. I've talked about it on the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast. I felt like he was an overrated Dynasty asset this year and overrated in redraft. You agreed on that. I said that he was like a Nick Chubb, and he was going in the second round. We continually encourage people to draft wide receivers over him.
Yep.
Now we have Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet goes about 10 spots lower in terms of draft capital is where they took Ken Walker last year. Zach Charbonnet is 220 pounds. He was a capable receiver at UCLA. He played as a true freshman at Michigan, ahead of Hassan Haskins, who's an NFL back right now. There's a lot to like about Zach Charbonnet as a prospect. Despite Ken Walker's success last year, they took him. Do we have a complete mess here, Billy? How do you see this backfield shaking out?
I don't think it's a mess. I mean, there was a lot of vacated touches here, right, in this backfield. People will mention vacated targets all the time, but from a running back standpoint, vacated rushing share is a real thing as well. We knew that they, didn't have Penny anymore. They really only had DJ Dallas in the backfield. They let go of Homer. There was a bunch of pieces that were gone. And yes, it was a bunch of kind of hodgepodge pieces, yet when you total it all up, it was a meaningful rush share. Ken Walker, to me, we talked about it a lot. Ken Walker, to me, was being overdrafted in round 2.
Yes.
Because we knew they were going to add a running back, and we knew that we were going to see his value or his ADP decline. And it's exactly what happened. But where he's going now, I think it's a value. He's going in round 4 now. So I got him middle of round 4. I'm in literally a draft right now as we're podcasting simultaneously. And he just went inside this draft. He just went 4-4. I'll take him all day at 4-4. Like, he just went one spot. Jahmyr Gibbs just went 4-3. J.K. Dobbins 4-5, right? And so Ken Walker just went as RB17 off the board. He's kind of been floating between that RB15, RB16, RB18 range inside of FFPC best balls. I think that's gone too far. When you look at the rankings right now, I still have him inside the top 15. I have him as RB14 in the projections. So I'll take the discount all day because I think he's a talented back. I think he's a great runner. You just said he reminded us a lot of Nick Chubb. And so
yes,
when you look at his breakaway rates, he was number 3 in the league. He had 17 breakaway runs. He was number 8 in breakaway run rate at 7.5%. So I like him in round 4. I did not like him in round 2. I will be owning a lot if he stays in round 4.
I think that's probably the right approach, especially for immediately drafting. I'll be interested to see how it shakes out when we get down to August. All you've got to have is Pete Carroll say Ken Walker's the man, Charbonnet's the backup, and I think that'll adjust a little bit.
Well, then no one will believe him either, and then they'll probably.
Well, Pete's the kind of guy that he's overinflating everybody. So you're right about that. But here's my fears. My fear is. And this is another player that I have a ton of in Dynasty. So I've had to do a lot of soul searching about how I want to handle Ken Walker. The fact that the team took a running back this early, I think says something. And I think internally, do they think Ken Walker cannot hold up? That might be something that led to this. They also might prefer to go to a committee approach. They might say the way we're going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles next year is we're gonna pound the ball and we're gonna change. I don't know if that's necessarily gonna happen, but that might have been an internal conversation. It definitely doesn't seem that way with the Jackson Smith-Njigba pick, but who knows with Seattle? They're a tough team to figure out, in my opinion. I worry about who gets the 2-minute work. I worry about who gets the goal line work. I worry about, hey, maybe Ken Walker, who we both agree is a natural runner. You talk about his breakaway ability. You talk about his broken tackles ability. I mean, he checks off all the boxes as a runner. Last year, he exceeded expectations as a receiver. That was the knock on him coming in, was that he's a guy that is going to be, just a between the tackles guy. He kind of disproved that. He looked pretty good catching the ball, but maybe Pete wants to split it up. These are the kind of things that get me nervous, Billy, where you might end up with a dead zone back and neither one helps you. One finishes as RB21 and one finishes as RB34. And neither one, you're living in purgatory with those guys. Do you foresee a situation that Pete could go with an ugly split and you get burned on that 4th round Walker?
It's not going to be an ugly split. I mean, don't get me wrong. Charbonnet is going to be involved, right? And but he's not going to see 45-50% of the share. That's just, I don't see that happening. I still think Kenneth Walker is close to 50%. I have him projected for 49%, which is 210 rushing attempts, right? And so it's not the 54-55% that we had him projected for, prior to the draft, but again, there was a lot of opportunity that left this team. And so I think that, yes, the round 2 draft capital says that the Seahawks want to run the ball, right? When you look at personnel they ran last year, they ran some of the most 12 personnel in the league, right? And so I think that they're going to run double tight end. They're going to run the ball. They're going to have extra blockers on the field. This to me was insurance. This was also, hey, if Geno Smith struggles this year, we can now lean on the rushing game, right? And so they still have DK, they still have Lockett. They go out and get Jackson Smith-Njigba. This is, to me, signaling that they want to improve their offense. They want to get better as a passing unit, which will also in turn balance the rushing attack. And so I think that overall, to answer your question in a long-winded way, I don't think it's going to be an ugly split. I still think Kenneth Walker is going to see the majority of the touches. Charbonnet is in my opinion, going to be involved, but not to the extreme that people are thinking.
Well, that's definitely one to consider, and I think you should listen to Billy also if you're drafting in a FFPC rookie draft this weekend. And we're actually going to pause, and we're going to hear from our sponsors, the FFPC.
People always ask me, hey, what is the World Series of fantasy or the Super Bowl of fantasy football? And it's easy. It's the FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. It's a $6 million prize pool. And they've had their Never Too Early Best Ball Leagues cranking since February. And so the FFPC is the answer to so many questions. Hey, where's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC. That's why we partner with them. If you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, seasonal, best ball, dynasty, go to the FFPC. And don't forget, promo code Underworld to get you $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team, no matter what team it is, no matter what format it is, at the FFPC. Go do it.
Those live drafts in Vegas are creeping up, Billy.
I can't wait.
We're going to be there soon enough. I can't wait either. I actually, this weekend, I want to go through and book a bunch of my drafts in Vegas. I try not to wait till the last minute. I want to have it mapped out. I'm sure you've booked a few.
Yeah, maybe a few.
Maybe a few. Okay, so we definitely come up, say what's up to us in Vegas. We know a lot of you guys, but I'm sure there's more people we'll meet this year. I can't wait. One guy that I want to touch base on, though, we had another kind of fallout here from the Gibbs situation is DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift ends up in Philadelphia on a huge day 3 trade. It wasn't significant what they gave up to get DeAndre Swift because he's in the last year of his contract. I think we can both agree on that, Billy.
Yeah, I mean it was borderline free, right? I think they actually get, if he walks in free agency, they get a round 4 pick back, and so realistically, they got him for 30 spot differences in round 7. I mean, it's legit free, and so this was the Lions just saying, take him, we don't want him, and I mean, Howie meant this is typical of the Eagles just playing chess as everyone else is playing checkers right now.
So it's a great story for Swift. There's several layers to this. We've wanted Swift to get out of Detroit since the Montgomery signing because, getting him away from Montgomery kind of made sense. And as soon as Gibbs was drafted, we were kind of begging for a move. So you get that. You get, a guy who we believe is a talented player kind of out of a crowded situation. Then you also have the factor that he's going home. DeAndre Swift is from Philadelphia. He played at St. Joe's Prep, which, if you know Philadelphia sports, it's one of the powerhouses, big, huge Catholic school. They're very good every year. And he was a legendary player there. He was Southeast PA Player of the Decade on a couple of lists. That's how good his career was there. And anybody who knows, high school football knows that that's a significant thing from that region. So DeAndre Swift going home. It's awesome. But how is he going to do in a Nick Sirianni-led offense that has A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert all getting their looks, Jalen Hurts running the ball himself, and you also have the factor that Nick Sirianni likes to use multiple running backs each game?
I loved Ian Hartit's tweet the other day. It was hilarious. I retweeted it. It was DeAndre Swift is in line for a monster workload and a breakout campaign if Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, Rachaad Penny, and Jalen Hurts get hurt. And so I think we have to just temper our expectations with Swift. Although we love the offensive line, we love the landing spot and inside the Eagles. We love the fact that they're going to be pushing the ball. We love the fact that they're going to have positive game scripts. There's still a few factors you have to consider. One, Kenneth Gainwell is a very similar back who's going to be involved in the passing game, who's also going to be involved on first and second downs, who was heavily involved in the red zone last year. And they really like him. They leaned on him in the playoffs, and he came up big when it mattered. They went out and signed Rachaad Penny, and yes, it was a small contract. Nonetheless, Penny has been explosive when healthy. He's averaged over 6 yards per carry for the past 2 years. His only downfall is health. So great. They go out and sign a dynamic back who's going to be able to give them some during the season. And when he's healthy, great. When he's not in the field, then they get to go to a 3-man rotation because they re-signed Boston Scott as well. And so Boston Scott never has a large workload, but it does have his involvement. Somehow always finds a way to fall into the end zone, to sneak into the red zone opportunity. And so DeAndre Swift is going to come in inside the projections at about 25% of the rushing share, which is only about 135 rushes. So we do expect him to be involved in the passing game. So I got him for about 9.5, roughly 10% target share. So it's a little over 50 targets. And it might be light compared to where he has been in the past. But again, Jalen Hurts doesn't dump the ball off a lot, right? His model when he gets in trouble is he tucks the ball and run. He's a rushing quarterback. That's what he does. And so people need to temper expectations because Swift isn't going to see the amount of passes that he saw inside Detroit when Jared Goff would just dump it off to him. So I like Swift, love the talent, love the talent, hasn't been able to stay in the field, but realistically, where he's going in drafts right now, I don't like the ADP, right? Like right now, he just went as RB23. He's going in the 5th round right now.
So I had this conversation where I think I might be comfortable taking him in the 5th. I think he's going to steam up higher though, Billy.
I think so too. I think he'll end up in the 4th.
I think I'll end up in the 4th, and then I'm probably out.
Right here, DeAndre Swift or Isaiah Pacheco?
That's a great one.
Okay.
That's a great one. I'll say they're about even, but I'll make a bull case for Swift.
Okay. How about Swift or Rachaad White?
That's a great one. That's a great question. And I think that I'd probably go Rachaad White because Rachaad White is a guy that I know is going to get a lot of targets. And I know that Rachaad White's going to get the majority of the carries. I don't have to worry nearly as much about a split, even though it's a worse offense. But I think that they'll be close, though, Billy.
Okay, Rachaad White or Cam Akers?
You're stealing the future questions. It's Rachaad White, though. But Cam Akers, Rachaad White, that's a great one, Billy. And I'll throw one to you then.
How about Swift or Cam Akers? What I meant.
I might go Swift in that one.
So I disagree, and it's because Cam Akers, again, doesn't have as many heads to compete against in this offense, right? Yes, the line is worse, the team is worse. Nonetheless, he's still slated to see the majority of the touches, right? There's not many backs that are slated for over 50% of the rushing share. Cam Akers is one of them. He's going a round and a half later than Swift, or he's going now around the same round as Swift, but he's going a round and a half later in some of these drafts. We see White, who's going literally a round and a half later, Dalvin Cook going a round and a half later, David Montgomery going later. I would much rather just wait and take these backs who have a much better path to success and opportunity in the rushing game, where we're going to be relying on Swift to catch a lot of passes in order to, outperform his ADP.
If he's going to outperform his ADP, they're going to have to change as an offense. We can agree on that. Like, they're going to have to, manufacture touches for him or make passing to him more part of the offense than we've seen, in the past 2 years under Nick Sirianni. So I agree with you to an extent. I think that my argument might be that he's a talented enough player that when he's healthy, he commands targets. He averages about 5 targets a game for his career. So even if that goes down a little bit, it's still, he's the kind of guy that offensive coordinators like getting the ball to in space. And they like, being able to dump off to him. I'm not sure if that's something that Philadelphia internally wants to add. They sure didn't look like a team that needed to change anything last year. They were just rolling. But I think a lot of times the very good teams are willing to throw new wrinkles in. So that one remains to be seen. But I do want to get back to, we just talked about Rachaad White and Cam Akers a little bit. Those two, as well as J.K. Dobbins, come out of the NFL draft totally unscathed. Cam Akers had Zach Evans in the 6th round. I know there's Zach Evans stands, but we'll close the door on that one. Your 6th round pick's not going to beat out Cam Akers. Cam Akers is safe as it comes. Dobbins is as well, and so is Rachaad White. In a post-NFL draft landscape, with no regard to ADP, who has the best season of the 3?
List them again for me.
Dobbins, Akers, Rachaad White.
Oh man, these are so clustered in my rankings.
I'll go first if you want to think about it. For me, we love Rachaad White. We've talked about Rachaad White a ton. He's going to have a very good year, and our 7th round exposure to him is a massive hit. But to me, it's Dobbins, because I think the quality of the offense is going to be the best one there. We've seen them add all these wonderful weapons in the passing game for Lamar Jackson. I like the offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. And I think there's a chance that Dobbins just has the career year that we've always envisioned for him. I think in terms of touchdowns scored, I think Dobbins could fall in the end zone 10, 12 times this year. And that would not surprise me, despite playing next to the running quarterback. And I think that it's the quality of the offense that kind of pushes him over. Whereas Rachaad White, I love him from a volume perspective. And I do think that the receiving is going to be there. Cam Akers, I'm just not ready to be there yet that I can envision Cam Akers for an entire season, putting it together. We haven't seen it yet. So to me, I would go Dobbins, White, Akers. How would you rank the 3, and your thoughts on my Dobbins outlook?
They're so clustered in my projections. So for instance, I got Rachaad White at 18. I have Dobbins at 21. I have Cam Akers at 22. They're all separated by 3 fantasy points. This is how close this group is between, and you can even include Jahmyr Gibbs inside of this cluster. It's from RB 17 to RB 22 is separated by 5 fantasy points, including Gibbs. And so I think when you have a cluster like this, there is a wide range of outcomes. It would not surprise me if any one of those guys outperformed the other. I think from a pure talent standpoint, I think J.K. Dobbins is probably the best in the best spot right now to outperform them. We even saw him last year coming off that injury, coming into back to the team, looking hobbled when he's running down on those breakaway runs. And he still had a 10.9% breakaway run rate. So I think from a explosiveness, Todd Monken offense leaning on the run, I think that we can expect to see a pretty heavily used season for J.K. Dobbins, coming another year off injury, I think, having more trust in that knee. The projections have it White just because of the volume, right? And the opportunity and the involvement in the passing game and just having a little bit more opportunity inside in getting those catches. But I think that J.K. Dobbins could. So I'm kind of beating on the bush here. I'm going to lean Dobbins, but I want to say White.
But the short answer is you'd be in on either one of them.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a reassuring thing. And I agree with you. And I think that when we start looking at,
if you look at draft boards though, Dobbins going 4 or 5, White's going 6, 7. So if you bake in ADP, it's White all day for me.
And I think you can also, we'll talk a little bit more about how we're building our teams. We'll look at some boards in future weeks, but you could potentially wait on RB and have Dobbins, White, and maybe one more player of that ilk. And I think your team would look pretty good the way that it's shaking out. Your thoughts on that?
There's so many opportunities and different ways to draft this year. I have found myself getting very creative this year because quarterback has just shot up boards, right? Jalen Hurts goes, like I said, I'm literally drafting right now live, Theo. And Jalen Hurts just went 2-4 in this draft. Patrick Mahomes, 210. Josh Allen, 211. We had 3 quarterbacks go in round 2. What does that do? That gets you people like Tony Pollard, Rhamondre Stevenson, Mark Andrews, all in that 3-3 to 3-7 range. When you have that type of flexibility, you can go any route, right? And so I love the running backs you're able to get in rounds 8, 9, 10. You can grab, a James Cook. You can grab a Rachaad White in 7 at times. He used to go in 8. You can grab P. Ryan, who's undervalued right now. You can grab a AJ Dillon, right? Or you can split it up and go early running back and say, hey, I'm going to go CMC, Rhamondre Stevenson, and, Derrick Henry the first 3 rounds, because the wide receivers also are getting pushed down the board because the quarterbacks are going early. You can get Treylon Burks in 7. You can get, Pickens in round 8, or Jameson Williams even later now. Cortland Sutton in round 9. There's so many ways that you can build it. So, man, there's not a right answer here.
I think it's that you hit the nail on the head, and I think you can build your team in different ways this year. I agree with you on that. And if you ask me, like, name the player or the draft slot that's in the main event final this year, I really couldn't tell you, because I think ADP is still going to shake up a little bit, but we see like a number of guys we like right now in certain segments, and I agree with you, like especially the running back values. I think they're all over the place right now. Two running backs that we've touched on are Rhamondre Stevenson and Tony Pollard. Both of them avoid Bijan Robinson. That rumor was out there, and the Vegas books actually had Bijan both going to both those places, like it was within the top 6. Where will the market end up on these two? Because I agree with you that they're both being underdrafted, but I think that the summer will kind of correct things. When we get to August, how will Tony Pollard be treated, and how will Rhamondre Stevenson be treated in terms of ADP?
I think Pollard has a worse chance of being safe, because more than likely somebody like Zeke, somebody like Fournette, somebody like Hunt will land inside Dallas. They had 6. He didn't take a running back until round 6. It was Deuce Vaughn, and it was a legacy pick just to get, an attaboy to his dad. Right. And so
I don't know. Well, I'll say, I think Deuce Vaughn, like Billy, you have Deuce Vaughn in our top 300 right now, and we don't dislike him. I think that if Pollard went down, Deuce Vaughn would be fun. He's not Danny Woodhead, but he's
exactly. But he's not going to see 225 carries.
No, he's not. Yeah,
right. And so that's where I'm going with this, because that's what's available inside of this backfield right now.
Don't piss off Kansas State people, Billy, on a podcast.
Like right now, Pollard shot up to RB5 after the draft. He was like RB10. If they added Zeke back, if they added a Fournette back, Pollard would probably drop back to 9 or 10 range, right? Just because there's going to be 170, 180, maybe 190 carries that are going to be, eaten out of that workload. He's still going to see the majority of the passing game inside this offense. That being said, Rhamondre Stevenson, the Patriots had 12 picks inside the NFL draft, 12. They used none of them on a running back. That is a clear signal that they, one, trust Rhamondre Stevenson, who saw nearly 60% of the rushing share last year, who was RB3 inside of targets last year. They're going to lean heavily on him again. It means they trust Pierre Strong. We're already hearing words they're going to cut Robinson. They still have Kevin Harris, who was good out of college as well. So I think the Patriots are content with the running back core they have, and Stevenson is probably safer of the two to remain where he's at inside of projections.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I will say that, like, we've talked about this a little bit, where these older running backs ending up in Dallas, I still think at the end of the day, Pollard gives you that incredible upside in this offense, especially to hit these massive spike week performances. But Rhamondre is super, super safe right now too. I mean, we talk about a guy who could potentially be, we talk about Eckler and McCaffrey are getting a little bit older. At the end of the day, we would bet on both of those guys having more catches than Rhamondre this year. But if I told you at the end of the year that Rhamondre was second overall in running back catches, you'd say, okay, like we've seen it last year. So he's close to it. And Billy and I, not to pat ourselves on the back, but we were encouraging people to draft these guys for weeks. And, we're here. They avoided it. And it's definitely exciting. And like you said, Billy, this is, another thing where you can kind of build your team backwards. It's kind of like you can get an anchor RB with Rhamondre without having to use one in the first round. So it's very, very exciting. Want to talk about a backfield that's not necessarily that exciting, but they both came through unscathed. At cost, who would you rather have, Brian Robinson or Antonio Gibson right now?
Antonio Gibson. I think he has a much larger path to success in the passing game. Brian Robinson is just like vanilla ice cream, right? It's like he's just always going to be there. It's not that exciting, right? You know what you're going to get. He's going to just plod up the middle. He's probably going to see 20 carries a game. You know, he's going to have volume. This was the debate. I don't know if you had left that night, but me and Alex Dunlap got in debate late at night. We were, a few drinks in, got debates. We have a few bets now going into 2023 season. And I said, I don't care if you like Brian Robinson. I don't even like Brian Robinson. And I'm not trying to debate for his case, but I'm telling you right now, he's going to be used a lot. They're going to give him the ball a lot. Look what they did down the stretch. Right. And so I think they have a pretty clear cut 1-2 now, right? Ground and pound, lightning and thunder. I think you have Brian Robinson, who's the thunder. You have Gibson, who's the lightning and has a chance to really kind of blow up the passing game with McKissick gone. You have a new offensive coordinator. You have an inexperienced quarterback who's going to be favoring the dump offs. It's going to benefit Gibson. So there's a lot of things to like about Gibson. I have him ranked a lot higher than consensus in the rankings. I have him at RB 29 right now.
Yeah, and we were on the Gibson train for a while now. I agree with you. Like, this is Brian Robinson is a Ron Rivera back. He likes these kind of guys, the plotters and guys that are reliable. They're not going to fumble. Antonio Gibson is the guy that we want in fantasy, especially when he's getting drafted behind Robinson. And I think that having the change in offensive coordinator with Bieniemy coming over there, like, Bieniemy wants a head coaching job. I think you're going to want to get the ball in Antonio Gibson's hands as much as possible. I also think an underrated aspect was they didn't upgrade the tight end position. They were rumored to add a tight end. They're going to go with Logan Thomas, who's getting a little bit older. So there's not really a threat of like a LaPorta or a Kincaid or a Michael Mayer being added in there. I think that's a low-key win for Gibson as well. So we're both on Gibson. We both love Gibson, the talent, and I hope it's going to happen.
Real quick, timeout. Who was the offensive coordinator when Jamal Charles was on the Chiefs?
I'm not sure.
I think it was Eric Bieniemy.
It might have been Bieniemy, right?
Yeah. If we can have that type of game plan for Gibson, I know we're not going to see the amount of rushing attempts, but the involvement in the passing game, even if we saw an increase in rushing attempts, RB 29 could be a smash spot for Gibson.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think like Gibson's a guy who's shown it. Gibson's a hyper athlete with receiving ability. And these are the kind of guys that when it clicks, you end up with big time fantasy success. You've already seen it from Gibson. So it's not like we're hoping for something. It's just a matter of him having to overcome the Rivera Turner like hatred of him. He's got to stop fumbling the football. That's the one thing with Gibson. You do worry about an early fumble and they get away from him. But if he can avoid his fumbles, he's a stud for fantasy. He's probably a better fantasy player than real life player, which is odd because a lot of times we see a disconnect with that. Want to keep going here though, Billy. This is a very quick one. Which second round wide receiver would you like to have in redraft the most? Marvin Mims, who was drafted to Denver, Jonathan Mingo, who was actually the first of these three off the board, to Carolina, competing with DJ Shark, Terrace Marshall, and Adam Thielen, or Jalen Reed, who landed in Green Bay, potentially as the second fiddle to Romeo Doubs game one.
It's 100% Reed for me. I just think he has just an immediate path to success inside this offense. There were so many vacated targets in this offense. Jordan Love is going to be looking for that connection outside of Christian Watson. Doubs. I mean, I liked Romeo more than most people did last year. But I think Reed's going to step in and take over that role pretty quickly.
I completely agree with you. I think Reed is a value right now. And I think that I would not bet on it, but there's a universe here where Reed is the more valuable Packers wide receiver than Christian Watson a year from now. Because I think that it's a spicy take, but Reed kind of fits into a very reliable slot that's putting up a ton of catches. I think that's in his range of outcomes. He's got toughness to him. Watson is a guy that I absolutely love. You've heard me rave about on this show, but that kind of speaks volumes to, I think Reed's going to be very successful in Green Bay. And a year from now, I think we're going to look at this as like a wide receiver pairing that we really, really like for Green Bay. So I'm with you on that one. That's a pretty easy one. And I'll flex that I drafted Jalen Reed in 3 rookie drafts already. I drafted him in the Black Crown League. Dan Williamson and I drafted him, and I actually traded Mike Williams for him to Scott Barrett in a dynasty league. So I was trying to rebuild this team. So I'm glad you're on that, Billy. I love Jalen Reed, and you make me feel good right now. Let's talk about another rookie wide receiver, but one that went higher. Quentin Johnston lands in Los Angeles. This is a player that was a big-time yak guy at TCU, put up big-time numbers, and a lot of it was yards after the catch. He's 6'1". He's over 200 pounds. He's an interesting player, and the Chargers certainly seem to like him. Is this pick elevate Justin Herbert for you?
Maybe a little bit. This offense passes so much. I think this is more of an insurance pick because we know that Mike Williams and Allen, can get injured at any given time. And Josh Palmer just did not capitalize on the opportunity last year. Right. And so I think this signals that they don't fully trust Palmer as the 3. This is probably the future inside LA. Quentin Johnston, I think, is definitely probably going to be the number 1 down the road, but it's not going to be this year. It doesn't elevate him, Herbert, to, that much, but I think it's more of kind of a floor pick.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, to me, I don't think it really changes a whole lot with Herbert in terms of attempted passes, in terms of his touchdown passes. I mean, there might be certain situations where if we really broke it down, adding a weapon like Johnston instead of Palmer is gonna be beneficial, or maybe they're able to be more successful in 4 wide receiver sets. You also have the Kellen Moore factor. So I'll say maybe it kind of reassures Kellen Moore.
I think we lost Theo there for a minute. Give him a couple minutes to get back. And if not, we can talk about the next person on the sheet, which is Devon Achane. So Devon Achane lands in the perfect spot. When we take a look at the projections, it's safe to say that he has an immediate path to success inside of Miami. I absolutely love this spot. And I remember I was sitting in the draft war room with Dario, and we were entering in our projections as the picks were coming in round 1, as the picks were coming in inside of round 2. Dario looks at me and says, how sweet would it be if they take, or if Miami takes Achane? And I said, oh man, it would be such a great pick because we know that McDaniels loves his speed, right? We know that they have Waddle. We know they have Tyreek Hill. They have Raheem Mostert, who's, a track star. I think Achane comes into this offense and immediately steps into a significant role. In the projections right now, I have Achane projected for 30% of the rushing share. I think it's a huge knock to Jeff Wilson, a huge knock to Raheem Mostert, who are now all in that 25 to 30% rushing share. But Achane's going to be heavily involved in the passing game as well, who's, he was also heavily involved in college in the passing game. And so when you have that speed that McDaniels likes, and the word is that McDaniels really lobbied for him inside of the draft room to get him on this team, you have to like the path to success for Devon Achane. How about you, Theo?
I'm all about Devon Achane, and I took a lot of flack from Cody when I was somewhat of an Achane stan, where this is a guy that I was very excited about. Certainly the 3rd round, I thought he would have gone in the 2nd, so that was like a little bit of a loss, even though it's pretty similar. But the landing spot is just phenomenal. You have a coach who knows how to use speed, knows how to get guys out in space. I think it's fantastic. And I know you're on him, and that kind of reassures me as well. I think that for Dynasty listeners, he might get overdrafted right now, which is kind of interesting. We've seen him go anywhere between like the 107 and the 110. But gosh, it could be really, really exciting. I'm very, very into him this year, and I think he's got like outside potential to be an RB2 this year, just based on spike weeks. One other question I had was, and it's a little depressing. Seattle takes my favorite wide receiver in the draft in Jackson Smith-Njigba. What does this do with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett? It's really like got me a little depressed, Billy, because we finally got DK up to 140 targets last year. So DK's finally hitting like that proper alpha target number.
Yep.
Now they throw what I consider to be an exceptional talent into the mix. Tyler Lockett has also been a guy that we've been able to lean on year in, year out. I know you're a Tyler Lockett stan, and I have to hear about him from Dan Williamson practically every GOAT District show. That's like his guy. What is going to happen here? What is going to happen here in Seattle? Can you kind of reassure me with any of these guys, or is there some question marks?
There's question marks, right? Because you have the comeback player of the year at the quarterback, Geno Smith, who we're going to say it's pretty safe to say that regression is due. Like you said, they have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba, all in the passing game. I said earlier that this team runs some of the most 12 personnel inside the league, which means a bunch of Noah Fant and Will Disley, which means the number 3 wide receiver is not going to be on the field, which would be Jackson Smith-Njigba.
And Billy, not to interrupt you, but Pete doubled down on his use of 12 because it was like today. I don't know if you saw that quote, but it was like, Pete, what are you doing? You're talking to me about Will Disley and Noah Fant when you have Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, why don't you sit back and let Shane Waldron do what they did in Los Angeles and let him cook a little bit and just get the ball to all these guys, increase the amount of pass attempts this year with the talent. But I worry like crazy about it. Let me tell you, my nightmare scenario here is they all kind of like DK Metcalf is a true alpha, but maybe he sees slightly less like manufactured, smoke routes, like a few less, like doesn't take a whole lot. He could go down 10 catches and all of a sudden he's kind of starting to be a little bit overdrafted or less appealing at ADP. Do you worry about DK a little bit, or is it more the Lockett situation here?
I think Njigba affects Lockett more than Metcalf. Yeah. Nonetheless, anytime you have a talented rookie like this land inside the same wide receiver corps, you have to knock them all down a peg. Like Metcalf moved to 133 targets in my projections. He went to 24.5 target share. Tyler Lockett moved to 110 targets. So all these guys took a small dip down. There was some vacated targets in this offense to begin with, so it was a little easier to project. It really kind of kills everybody else below them. But
it sucks, Billy.
It sucks.
It sucks.
You don't like the landing spot for Dynasty. It's safe to say that you can look at other receivers now and make a case for them over Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Well, so it's hashtag rookie draft weekend. So I'm allowed to talk Dynasty for like 10% of this show. Jackson Smith-Njigba is not the kind of guy that I'm gonna dodge at all in Dynasty because I believe he's an exceptional talent. And I'll even say that if it gets to a point where people want to beat up the situation too much, I think I might end up with a little too much Jackson Smith-Njigba in redraft because he's going to end up being at a point where Garrett Wilson was being drafted. Like, I think he'll get a little bit higher than that because people are a little bit more into the quarterback situation, which we'll touch on in Seattle. But like, this is the kind of wide receiver. It's kind of like in the NFL, life finds a way sometimes. And when you're just that dude and you can do the things Jackson Smith-Njigba can do, sometimes it just works out. And I think sometimes when we fade so much, we don't get into the fact that they might have internal meetings and say, hey, we got to get this kid Smith-Njigba the ball more. So to me, it's an absolute mess. But for me, I'm probably a little less inclined to draft DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and maybe a little bit more inclined to draft Smith-Njigba if he gets pushed down a little bit.
And we just need.
Well, where do you think he's going to end up by the end of the summer?
So let's see where he went in this draft that's going on right now. So he just went round 7, dude. Ew.
He
went ahead of Chris Godwin.
That's a mistake. But Billy, I'll say
he went ahead of Lockett. He went ahead of Chris Godwin, ahead of Treylon Burks, ahead of Mike Evans. Get the fuck out of here.
Billy, did his manager have Geno Smith?
No, he did not.
Okay, so I don't. That's not a.
He took Geno Smith the next round.
So he gets a little stack there, Billy.
That's stupid. You don't do that.
It's a 4 stack.
You're gonna take the wide receiver 3 on Seattle before the wide receiver 1 inside of Tampa, inside of Tennessee, inside of
it's bad process. But I think that my takeaway is he won't be in the 7th round when we're actually drafting in August.
No, your takeaway is this guy's on drugs for taking him there. Like
it's definitely, hashtag force to stack guys exist a lot of times.
It's not April 20th, is it?
No, it's not. It's a little past that. But anyway, we cut it. We're very angry at Pete Carroll that we had to talk about Ken Walker versus Charbonnet, and we had to talk about the 3-headed monster wide receiver. But
hold up. I have to figure out, this can't be normal. Where is he going in drafts? His ADP is 55.
Well, that was I feel like a lot of how specific are you? You post NFL draft ADP?
This is the 350s over at FFPC.
Oh, so it's too much then. It's too much then.
He's going as 44 off the. Oh my god, that's disgusting.
It's the guy's an exceptional talent. He's an exceptional talent.
Exceptional talent, but
yep.
Ahead of all those receivers, are you taking him ahead of those guys?
No, I'm taking Chris Godwin. I'm taking Treylon Burks. But I think 100%. when you get Burks versus Jackson Smith-Njigba, like that one would maybe give me pause because I have some questions about Tennessee, and maybe I wouldn't want to. As much as I love Burks, it might be an offense to avoid. But you can't take him over Godwin. Godwin's a proven thing. Godwin was a top 12 wide receiver in points per game last year. He's been a top 3 wide receiver in points per game, and he's not 35, guys. Chris Godwin's still a young man. But the one takeaway here is we're mad at Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks for whatever they did to us in fantasy. But the one player who might end up becoming a real value here is Geno Smith. Like, what does this do to, like, I'm writing an article now. It's a Dynasty article, but my veteran winners from the NFL draft.
Oh, Geno Smith is a huge winner. They did not draft a quarterback. They went out and surrounded him with weapons. We just talked about this on the Dominator earlier with Matt. So if you want to, go back and watch that, there'll be some slightly different takes there as well between Matt talking and me talking. But just to kind of reiterate the season that he had, I mean, he was number 9 in pass attempts, number 8 in deep ball attempts. He was number 3 in money throws. He was number 1 in where was it? No, not number 1. Sorry, number 5 in pressured throws. Number 7 in air yards. He was number 9 in yards per attempt, number 8 in adjusted yards per attempt. You look across the board, he was like top 10 and so many metrics. And so I love Geno Smith this year. We were talking about him coming back into a contract year. And I think that Geno Smith is becoming a bargain. I do think there's a little bit of regression because I think it's going to be hard for him to be top 10, top 5 in all these categories again. Like, just to continue on those stats, he was number 11 in accuracy rating, number 4 in completion percentage. He was number 4 in deep ball completion, or number 5 in deep ball completion percentage, number 5 in pressured completion percentage, number 3 in play action completion percentage. So it's going to be very hard for him to repeat these stats. If he does, it's a smash at where he's going at ADP, but I think we're going to see some regression even with the additional weapons.
Yeah, I do worry about him getting a little bit steamed up, but it's definitely exciting because I think Seattle, for what it's worth, has the best wide receiver trio in the league right now for me. So it's exciting times. And if I would have told you 2 years ago that Geno Smith was the starting quarterback with the best wide receiver trio in the league, you would have laughed in my face. So it's exciting. Rapid fire. We saw three tight ends drafted in the top 40. Dalton Kincaid, my guy, Sam LaPorta in Detroit, Michael Mayer to the Las Vegas Raiders. Who has the best season in redraft this year, Billy?
Kincaid, say him again.
Kincaid, LaPorta, and Mayer.
Man, it's tight between Kincaid and LaPorta. So I think that Kincaid has an opportunity to become is a better offense, right? Has an opportunity to surpass Knox. I still think Knox is going to be involved. I think LaPorta probably sees more target share and probably more targets, but I'm going to give a slight lean to Oh man, I don't want to say it. Slightly into Kincaid. I'll do it.
Thank
Theo.
you.
I'll
Thank you.
do
That's
it.
my guy. That's my guy. It's Kincaid, everyone. It's Kincaid season. If you have rookie drafts this weekend, draft him. And I'm very interested to see how he does in that Buffalo offense. That is a top-notch offense, adding a player that I think can win at multiple levels, and I think he can help in the red zone. I'm curious to see, we've talked about like Khalil Shakir getting more work in the slot this year. Do they decide to use Kincaid in the slot sometimes? I think that could happen as well. So it's Kincaid. Now, how about quickly Mayer or LaPorta?
LaPorta pretty easily for me.
LaPorta easily. Okay.
Yeah.
So temper our expectations for Mayer year one.
Yeah.
And I think this is important that Dynasty people listen to Billy on this one, because if you're drafting Mayer, you're going to have to draft him oftentimes ahead of LaPorta. So if you're looking for year one production, just go LaPorta. I agree with Billy on that one. I love Mayer, but LaPorta already was a more fantasy friendly kind of profile, Billy, with the speed and the yak ability, and also the quality of the offense in Detroit. Final question that I had for you tonight was, and a hint, I want you to talk about Jordan Addison. But besides Bijan Robinson, what rookie makes the biggest impact for our redraft teams?
It is Jordan Addison. It steps into an immediate role. You look at this offense, the number 8 in expected pass play. It's the only rookie I have projected for 100 targets. This is one of the few offenses in the NFL that all 3 receivers have. I think Osborne is just under 100 targets, but it was very close. Like, I almost gave him 100 targets, right? So love the addition to Addison. I think he's, doesn't have the talent of somebody like Njigba, but when you talk about projections in 2023 and in fantasy outlook, I think he has probably the best path to success as any rookie does.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love Jordan Addison. I liked him before the draft, and this is an unbelievable situation because he's going to have defenses focusing on Justin Jefferson week in, week out. Also the threat of TJ Hockenson. Jordan Addison is just going to be able to eat up defenses potentially with advantageous matchups every single week. He's stylistically kind of in that Jerry Jeudy, Stephon Diggs type build and style of receiver. And I'll make a bold call, Billy. I know you have Jordan Addison finishing where in our wide receivers?
41.
So I talked to Dario about this as well. I think that my big bold bet is Jordan Addison is going to be finishing inside the top 24 this year.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Theo!
I think that's my bold bet here. I think it's going to be a very consolidated target tree.
Okay, hold it.
Yeah,
I know you got to run soon. Your wife's going to kill you.
No. I'll stay on for the debate here. And Billy,
so top 24.
Yeah.
He's going to outperform Drake London, Michael Pittman, Amari Cooper, Treylon Burks, DJ Moore, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, Mike Williams, Jahan Dotson, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk, Cortland Sutton, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jacoby Myers, George Pickens.
He's going to outperform Juju Smith-Schuster.
You picked one out of like 15 names.
And I'll say that I think he's going to outperform Tyler Lockett. My takeaway is we see these rookie wide receivers breaking through each year into the top 24. It happens every single year. It's guys we're not looking at. We have an offense that is going to be very productive. We can both agree Minnesota's going to continue to pass the ball. And I think at the end of the day, Jordan Addison, like with your guys' projections, I think you and Dario, you guys are maybe the best in the business as a pair. It's great. I love watching you guys work. And huge hat tip to you, Billy. Anybody who didn't know this, Billy and Dario were updating our projections as the draft was going on. It was like crazy. It was very impressive. Your guys' work ethic and your process was great. But when you say wide receiver 41, Billy, you're already in the wheelhouse because all you're having to do is beat your projections by like 15%, correct?
No.
20%?
Maybe a little bit more. Yeah.
But a 20% beat can totally happen with some of these young guys. This is not like it's not like I'm asking him to double up. And my big takeaway here is, Billy, I'm going to draft the hell out of Jordan Addison because I think that at the end of the day, he's the kind of guy that we're going to be able to flex. And if I'm wrong, and he still has paths to wide receiver 3 land, like I think he's going to be a very productive player. And I think that the stats are going to prove it. So I'm in on Jordan Addison. He's going to be the rookie to break into the top 24. I don't know who he's going to displace, but we will
a lot of those names.
A lot of those names, but it happens every year, Billy. So let me ask you this. So we've had a top 24 rookie for what, the last 4 or 5 years? We could go back and kind of, look at it, but it just happens every single year. So Jordan Addison is my bet to lead all rookies in fantasy points at the wide receiver position, despite my love for Jackson Smith-Njigba. And I like a couple of these other guys. I think Addison clearly is the guy that's going to eat this year. So I'm saying he's going to have the outsized production, and he's going to end up as a wide receiver too. That's my bold call, Billy.
I don't really like it, but okay, maybe.
Yeah, no, you don't have to. I mean, you don't have to agree, but you will be drafting Jordan Addison.
I'll be drafting a lot of them.
Yeah. I'm not encouraging.
24 is very ambitious, but there's a realm where it exists.
You don't need to reach for him. This is a guy that I'm encouraging you to draft at ADP cost, and I do think that he will gain a little bit of steam in ADP as the summer moves on, and it becomes very apparent, and people start targeting wide receiver 2s more. Like, he's the wide receiver 2 in Minnesota. It's a great situation for him. We both really, really, really like it. Billy, we have back-to-back weeks of very, very exciting guests.
Yep.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Jeff Ratcliffe?
Yeah, Ratcliffe's coming on next week. We're going to talk about rookie projections. We're going to compare projections. We're going to be talking about some of the veterans in those areas. I'll confirm with him, this weekend just to make sure we're all still on the same page, but we are expecting him on the show next week. And I'm always excited to talk projections, especially with Jeff Ratcliffe, who's also one of the most accurate in the business. So very excited for that show.
And then 2 weeks from today, or excuse me, 2 weeks from yesterday, we're going to have Josh Larkey back in the Roto Underworld. Josh does fantastic work for the 33rd team, and a lot of you know him for his work at Player Profiler. He's a good friend of ours, and that'll be a really good one. We'll have a chance to look at some ADP. I am Theo Greminger. I'm joined always by Billy Muzio. Thanks for tuning in, and we're going to check you next week.
See you, everybody.
Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out playerprofiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.